Edit audio.
In the last episode of the Sandra Hemme story, we told you about Sandy, a woman who has spent the better part of her young life under psychiatric care, and the rest of her life incarcerated.
Well, so a majority of the cases I've written about are men who are prisoners who claim that they're wrongly convicted. I think a majority of people in America who are wrongly convicted are men and men of color specifically. So the fact that the prisoner in this case is a woman, and if Sandy is ultimately exonerated, she will be the longest known wrongly imprisoned woman in U.S. history.
In this episode, we're turning our attention to another suspect in this case. In December of 1980, a man came into a photography store in Kansas City, Kansas to purchase camera equipment. One of the employees recognized him. He tried to make a purchase back in November with a credit card that didn't work. It turns out that credit card the young man had tried to use was stolen, and on the back read Patricia Jeschke. The man tried to use the card on the same day that Patricia was found murdered. This information presents a new suspect in the case. It also presents a possible motive. The man using Patricia's stolen credit card was named Michael Holman, and he was a St. Joseph police officer.
The alternative suspect that Sandy's lawyers point to is Michael Holman. He was at the time, a 22-year-old patrolman at the St. Joseph Police Department. He was rumored within his own police force to be a burglar.
That's Luke Nozika, a former reporter with the Kansas City Star.
It's known that Holman tried to use the homicide victim's credit card the day that she is found.
On November 13th, one day after Patricia was found dead, Michael Holman, the 22-year-old St. Joseph police officer, visited the Western Photograph store in Kansas City, Kansas, to purchase equipment totaling $630.43. Linda Bodine, who was working that day, said that the credit card charge wouldn't go through. Over a month later, on December 19th, 1980, Holman told his police colleagues that they wouldn't believe the story he had for them. He explained to fellow officers about how he came into possession of Patricia's credit card. At this time, Sandy is currently in jail on charges for this woman's murder. Naturally, this looks suspicious, so the police followed up. That same day, they went to Western Photography Store and spoke with employee Larry Daly. They showed him photos of 5 different people and asked if any looked familiar. One did. Larry identified Michael Holman almost instantly, as he had been in the store the day before. Larry proves this with a receipt dated from the purchase with Michael Holman's name written on it. The employees at the photography store placed Michael Holman as a possible suspect. What's more, multiple witnesses reported seeing a white pickup truck near the murder scene back in November. Holman, in fact, owned a white pickup truck, but he also had an alibi, a woman named Mary. According to Michael Holman, on the night of Patricia's death, he picked Mary up in his truck and took her to the Woodland Courts motel where they had sex. The motel was located just yards from Patricia's duplex. Holman went on to say that as he was leaving the motel and walking back to his truck, he stepped on a brown purse that contained Patricia's credit card. He said that he took the card and then threw the purse in the dumpster. He went on to say that he later used a hole punch to remove the IA from Patricia, and he put a keychain through that hole. He erased her name from the back of the card and wrote the name Patrick instead. Though Holman claimed to have an alibi, police still brought him into the station for questioning. The officers who were interviewing him asked for more information about his alibi. He had none. During the questioning, they asked Holman to draw a diagram of the motel that he and Mary had sex in. He refused. Holman was then allowed to meet with his uncle, a fellow police officer who advised him to ask for a lawyer.
Detectives try to confirm his alibi. They go out to the scene. They bring a lineup of photos that includes Michael Holman, and they ask a gas station attendant and the motel supervisor if they remember seeing Holman or anyone in the photos. They did not. And separately, the motel worker says they didn't have anyone named Mary stay at the hotel that night. So essentially, his alibi could not be confirmed.
So Holman's alibi can't be confirmed by the police, and there's no record of this Mary person. There's even more evidence that puts Holman at the scene. Here's Luke again.
There's a hair found at the crime scene in Patricia Jeschke's bedsheets.
Sandra's trial lawyer, Robert Duncan, said that a hair found on Patricia's bedsheet exhibited microscopic characteristics similar to that of Holman's, and said that the possibility that it came from Michael Holman can't be eliminated.
They can't conclusively say if it came from Holman or not, but they say it's similar.
And that's not all. After their questioning, police searched Holman's home and found jewelry that was stolen during a home burglary. Among them, they found a pair of wishbone earrings.
And we know that they're the victim's earrings because her father identifies them in front of the police chief at the time, a guy named Bob Hayes. The victim's father says, yeah, I bought those earrings for my daughter, way back, I believe he said years ago, at a Montana gift shop. And separately, Holman's wife says that she has never seen the earrings before. So she says they're not hers, more or less.
So a pair of Patricia's earrings are found in Holman's home, suggesting the two knew each other. Yet for some reason, this evidence was never included in the trial.
And do you know if that was presented during that time, or is this something that's new? Or omitted, rather, right?
This is new, yeah. So the fact that the homicide victim's earrings were found in the patrolman's apartment, that was hidden from Sandy's legal team at the time. So this evidence was not presented at trial, and her attorney who represented her on appeal says, yeah, this is completely new information to him. He would have used it on appeal if he had heard about it at the time.
I was shocked to hear this and looked into it further. I found a police report dated December 22nd, 1980, confirming that Police Chief Robert Hayes showed multiple pieces of jewelry to Patricia's father, Earl Glothlin, all obtained from Michael Holman's residence, and that he bought them as a gift to his daughter. The report even shows a small drawing of the earring. So this means that in December of 1980, the police knew about the earrings. They knew that they were found in Michael Holman's home and that they belonged to Patricia. This police report is in my hands right now, but this information was never presented at Sandy's trial, which is just baffling to say the least. We'll be right back after this short break. Taking care of your health isn't always easy, but it should at least be simple. That's why for the last 2 years, I've been drinking AG1 every day, no exceptions. It's just 1 scoop mixed in water once a day, every day, and it makes me feel ready to take on the day. That's because each serving of AG1 delivers my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more. It's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. With AG1, I know I'm getting essential brain, gut, and immune health support with vitamins, probiotics, and nutrients from whole foods. I like to think of it as nutritional insurance. I know I'm covering my nutritional bases right from the start of the day. In fact, I brought travel packs for me and my producers while we're away working on this season of the podcast. If there's one product I had to recommend to elevate your health, it's AG1, and that's why I've partnered with them for so long. So if you want to take ownership of your health, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/OzarksTrueCrime. That's drinkag1.com/OzarksTrueCrime. Check it out. Michael Holman doesn't get off completely for this. He was arrested for stealing by deceit and receiving stolen property, and he spent a year in prison. Despite all of this, and having no solid alibi, Holman was never charged with Patricia's murder. Instead, Sandy, who didn't know Patricia and has no evidence tying her to the crime, is taking the fall by her own admission, an admission that happened while she was heavily medicated and under psychiatric care. Luke told me about a former coworker of Holman's, who was a senior member of the St. Joseph Detective Division in 1980. He strongly supported Sandy's innocence.
There is a former member of St. Joe's Detective Division named Lloyd Pasley. he was in the detective division during this homicide and actually interviewed Michael Holman, one of his colleagues. And Pasley says he's now 91. He says that he has always believed that Sandy is innocent and that Holman was the victim's lone killer. He said he hasn't been able to find any connection that Sandy knew Holman. And he remembers, he signed a sworn affidavit. He remembers that he told the police chief at the time that they wouldn't get anything credible from interviewing Sandra Hemme. I mean, Pasley has said he doesn't think that detectives ever confirmed Holman's whereabouts that night. He thinks that evidence points to Holman as the sole killer. He notes that Patricia lived alone, but that her toilet seat was up when crime scene detectives arrive, indicating that potentially a man had been there. And Pasley believes that Patricia was killed during a burglary, and Holman was rumored within his own department to be a burglar. Holman was investigated for insurance fraud, and so when officers go to search his storage unit, they find a weapon, a service weapon, like a police weapon, that he had reported stolen. And Pasley found out about it and wanted to get it tested to see if it had been used in any crimes. But he says that the gun was cleaned and put back in service, meaning another officer may have used it before he was able to test it. And he writes in his affidavit, "I've always wondered if that pistol could have been the blunt object Mr. Holman used while killing Miss Jeschke." And, I went up and interviewed Mr. Pasley, and he says that he was not the only person within the St. Joseph Police Department at the time to suspect Holman. He says that there was a captain who has since died who was also convinced that Holman was the killer. So now Pasley says that he is trying to help right a wrong by coming forward with this information.
Lloyd Pasley is still alive, and I think there's a good chance we'll hear from him during Sandy's upcoming evidentiary hearing. Holman, who served as a police officer for just 18 months, was discharged shortly after Patricia's murder. This was a police officer that was doing all sorts of illegal things, like collecting insurance fraud money in a different city, all while serving his role on the squad. He was then a suspect in this case when he had possession of Patricia's credit card, in addition to her jewelry. But yet it's Sandy that's being relentlessly interrogated and subsequently pled guilty, all while significant evidence is being swept under the legal rug. Here's the thing I wanted to know. How could something like this happen? I reached out to Kent Gibson for some answers. Kent didn't work on Sandy's case, but his legal experience consists mostly of post-conviction cases like hers. And I needed an expert opinion on this. My producer Allie and I reached Kent remotely. It took a second for us to get set up, but shortly after, Kent appeared on the screen, a friendly face in his Cardinals baseball shirt.
Thank you, Allie. And hi, Kent. It's good to see you on camera.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I see you have your Cardinals shirt on.
Yeah, they had a bad season, but we're not fair weather fans, so.
Kent is an expert in situations like Sandy's, where those who have been convicted are filing for their cases to be re-examined.
So I've done a lot of innocence and exoneration type cases. I haven't gotten anybody out this year, but the last 2 years I've gotten people out or exonerated 2 different people. So
Kent's been an attorney in Missouri for his entire career. He gave me some background on the reputation in Buchanan County, where Sandy's trial is taking place.
As you may know, if you know anything about Missouri history, that whole area, St. Joseph, the north of Kansas City, was Jesse James and all the Wild West, and I think there's still a little bit of that mindset permeates a lot of the judicial systems in that area, which is north of Kansas City, where I practice. It's had a reputation for years, that whole area, of having so-called hanging judges, where it's not a good place to be and get in trouble. I'll put it that way.
In the mid to late 1800s, this area of Missouri was known for its Wild West attitude. Outlaw Jesse James robbed banks and stagecoaches across the Midwest and was eventually killed in St. Joseph. I wanted to ask Kent what the legal system is like in this part of Missouri now.
Problem is, in Missouri is probably the toughest state in the country to exonerate anyone, just because of a variety of factors, unfriendly laws, unfriendly courts, the fact that the prosecutors, and particularly the Missouri Attorney General, have never been known to ever concede that they may have convicted somebody who's innocent. So it's an uphill battle, to say the least.
We learned from Kent that by using Brady law, defendants who have already been committed are able to file a post-conviction remedy and bring up evidence that was not brought up in trial. But that's not always easy to do, and especially not easy in Missouri.
The Court of Appeals here in Kansas City, they said you can't raise an innocence claim unless you've got the death penalty. So that's another reason why it's hard to get post-conviction relief in Missouri.
And if you remember, Sandy didn't receive the death penalty, but a 50-year prison sentence without the possibility of parole, making it more difficult to raise her innocence claim. Here's what Luke had to say about it.
The Missouri Attorney General's office, under Democrats and Republicans, have for decades fought innocence cases. It's really just been what's been described by lawyers as a tradition of the office to seek to uphold convictions. And that has been widely criticized. Defense attorneys and post-conviction lawyers say a prosecutor's job is to do justice, to seek justice, not just to uphold convictions. So lawyers who do this kind of work say, the Attorney General's office generally tries to keep innocence claims out of court.
I'm not a lawyer, but generally, I like to think that most lawyers are working in the pursuit of justice. And upholding prior convictions, which could have been wrong, doesn't sound ethical. But how does Kent see this playing out in the Missouri courts?
How does that compare with other states?
Well, in just about every state, and I've sort of done some research on that over the years, sort of as an advocate, to try to see if we could convince the Missouri legislature to expand the rights of defendants to get into court if they have new evidence, is that just about every court or every state has a mechanism by which a defendant can get back into court in the county where he was convicted and get a hearing and prove his innocence. Missouri does not permit that.
Kent's experience with the Missouri legal system has been invaluable to investigating this case. He's given us a window into how strict the Missouri court system is compared to other states in the country. I admire the work he's doing for post-conviction cases and the effort he puts into making sure innocent people stay out of the prison system. So I wanted to know, based on everything he's told me, what he thought about Sandy's case. And what he told me, well, it made me feel so disappointed.
If they can prove 10% of what they say, I mean, it's pretty outrageous, particularly with the evidence implicating this police officer. I mean, that's just mind-blowing when you have all the unimpeachable evidence that points to him. Then all you have to convict Ms. Hemme is a false confession that doesn't jive with the facts of the case. It's just shocking it's not shocking to me, but it should be shocking to anybody that she could get convicted and serve 40 years in prison with what is known now. And in a just world, this could have been corrected a lot sooner. And if Missouri had a better and more fair process for allowing innocence cases to be heard, I would dare say she would have been released years ago.
The Missouri Attorney General, Republican Andrew Bailey, has a history of opposing wrongful convictions. And Bailey is the one who needs to approve Sandy's filing for this post-conviction trial. I asked Kent about this because I can't understand why there's such opposition to wrongful convictions.
Is there anything that you can tell me about the Missouri Attorney General and just like maybe the reputation that they have?
Well, Andrew Bailey, who's up for re-election, and basically said they see it as their duty to blindly try to uphold every conviction no matter what, rather than take a more nuanced or balanced approach and say, hey, we looked at this case and we agree. We may not be totally convinced he's innocent, but he should be given an opportunity through a new trial to do that. And that doesn't seem unreasonable to me.
Kent also told me that this is an issue across party lines in Missouri. The last several attorney generals, both Republican and Democrat, have defended convictions regardless of the facts.
They think the tougher on crime you are, the better it is for your political career. I don't think that's necessarily true anymore, but that's the way that they've always perceived it. So giving someone a break or conceding that someone's innocent just is not in their DNA.
Michael Holman was initially arrested for stealing by deceit and receiving stolen property. He spent a year in prison for the crimes he committed in St. Joseph, Missouri. Once out, he was charged with breaking into a house. He later did time for theft in Nebraska. Eventually, he landed at the Missouri State Penitentiary in Jefferson City. Holman died at the age of 57 on March 23, 2015 in Omaha, Nebraska. He was never charged for the murder of Patricia Jeschke. In my time investigating this case, I've come across so many shocking details, from reading about the unfair interrogation tactics they used on Sandy, to the evidence that was never included in her trial, and the fact that a police officer had stolen items that belonged to the victim. A police officer that had no alibi the night of Patricia's murder. But here's something that's even more shocking to me. Sandy wasn't the first patient from the St. Joseph State Hospital convicted of a murder they likely didn't commit. In the next episode of Ozark's True Crime, the Sandra Hemme story.
Around the same time that Sandy's case was going through the courts initially, St. Joseph police and law enforcement more generally were roiled in another controversy. It was the wrongful conviction of a man named Melvin Lee Reynolds. He was convicted of a very high-profile murder of a 4-year-old boy.
The Sandra Hemme story is part of the Edit Audio original series Ozark's True Crime. It is written and hosted by me, Ann Roderick Jones. This episode was produced by Ali Sirwa and Kathleen Speckert, and was edited, mixed, and mastered by Ali Sirwa. Our executive producer is Steph Colburn. Thank you immensely to the entire Edit Audio team and to Patrick Rendell for the theme music. A special thank you to Luke Nozica and Kent Gibson. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at hello@editaud.io. That's HELLO@EDITAUD.io.